The wind howled through the ruined castle, carrying with it the scent of wet stone and forgotten sorrow. Leora sat alone in her room, staring at the cracked window pane, her frail fingers tracing the jagged edges. The castle had once been magnificent, a symbol of her family's power, but now it lay in decay, a hollow monument to their fall. Shadows stretched across the walls like silent watchers, and Leora felt as if the darkness itself was pressing against her. She had spent most of her 16 years confined to the upper rooms of the castle, her legs weak, her body uncooperative. Every movement was painful, every step a reminder of what she could not do. The villagers whispered about her as if she were a ghost. "The crippled daughter of the cursed house," they said. Sometimes, she thought they were right. Leora had grown used to the quiet. She had grown used to the ache in her bones, the loneliness that filled her days, and she had grown used to thinking that her life might be better ended than endured. Tonight, however, something restless stirred inside her. The rain had begun to fall heavier, pounding against the roof with a rhythm that matched her racing heart. She could not stay inside anymore. Slowly, painfully, she lowered herself from the window ledge and began her descent toward the forest that bordered the castle. The forest had always frightened her. Legends said it was home to spirits, creatures, and forces that men were wise to avoid. But tonight, Leora did not feel fear. She felt a need to escape, even if only for a while, to breathe in air that did not taste like stone and dust. By the time she reached the edge of the forest, night had settled fully, and the moon hung low, casting silver light across the wet leaves. The forest was alive with whispers, with the sounds of hidden creatures stirring in the darkness. Leora stumbled along the muddy path, her legs trembling, her breath short. But she did not stop. Then she felt it a presence. Cold, commanding, impossible to ignore. From the shadows of the trees, a figure emerged. He moved with unnatural grace, silent, yet powerful. His eyes glowed faintly red in the moonlight, and his gaze held hers as if he could see every secret she had ever tried to hide. "You should not be here," the figure said, his voice low, smooth, and yet sharp as a blade. I had to leave," Leora whispered, her voice breaking. "I cannot stay there. In that room. In that life." He stepped closer, and she could feel the weight of his presence pressing around her. He was tall, impossibly strong, yet there was a strange elegance in his posture. His pale face seemed carved from marble, and his eyes held both danger and something else she could not name, something that made her heart beat faster despite herself. "You are fragile," he said, almost a statement to himself. "Yet you walk willingly into the darkness. That is rare and interesting." I do not fear death," Leora admitted, her voice trembling but honest. "Sometimes, I wish it would come and take me away. I am useless, weak, cursed." The figure studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended a hand. "I can offer you a choice," he said. "You may surrender and end your life, or you may live and serve a purpose greater than yourself." Leora blinked. She had expected cruelty, mockery, or indifference, but not this calm, commanding offer. "Why? Why me?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Because," he said, stepping closer, "you carry a spark in you, hidden beneath your pain. Few do, and it could change everything. If you are willing to live for me." Her heart stopped. Live for him? What did that even mean? She had never known someone who spoke to her with such certainty, such authority. And yet, the idea of surrendering herself entirely, it both terrified and fascinated her. She began, then stopped. Words failed her. She had always believed her life had no meaning, that her body and her weakness made her unworthy. And yet here was someone, a creature of darkness, who saw value in her, even beauty in her pain. "Do not decide hastily," he said. His eyes softened, just enough for her to see a hint of something human beneath the supernatural power. "But know this. If you die now, your suffering ends. If you live, your suffering may continue, but it will have a purpose." Leora felt a shiver run through her. She had never been offered choice before. Her life had always been determined for her by her family, by her illness, by fate itself. And now, for the first time, she was being asked to make her own decision. I do not know if I can," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You can," he said firmly, "because I will not let you fall. Not completely, not while I breathe." Something stirred inside her then. A warmth she had not felt in years. Hope, desire, a fragile, tentative, yearning for life, even in the darkness. For the first time, she imagined the possibility of being seen, being needed, being more than just a crippled girl in a ruined castle. I will try," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure nodded, almost approvingly. "Then, we begin." He extended his hand again, and this time, she took it. His grip was strong, anchoring, and a strange energy pulsed through her. Not painful, but awakening. It was as if the shadowed forest itself recognized her decision and bent around it, acknowledging that something new had begun. They moved through the trees together, silent but connected. Leora felt fear mingled with exhilaration. But mostly, she felt alive in a way she had never known. The night seemed to hum around them, alive with whispers of destiny, of things unseen yet powerful, watching, waiting. As they reached a clearing, the vampire stopped. His eyes scanned the darkness, ever vigilant. Then he turned to her, his gaze intense. "Your path will not be easy," he said. "You will be tested. The world will try to break you, and I will test you as well. You must learn to endure, to survive, to become more than what you were born to be." I will try," Leora said again, her voice steadier now. "I want to live. For you, if that is what you mean." He regarded her in silence for a long moment, as if weighing the truth of her words. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. "Good. Then your life begins tonight. And know this. Those who seek to harm you will find themselves facing me." For a moment, Leora felt something like safety, a shield against the cruelty of the world. And for the first time, she dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, she could survive. But as the moonlight glinted off the trees, casting long, twisted shadows, she felt a tremor of unease. She knew her life was no longer her own. She had entered a world of darkness and power, and nothing would ever be simple again. A sudden rustle from the edge of the clearing made her gasp. The vampire's eyes flashed red as he turned sharply, and the wind carried a whisper of voices she could not understand. Danger was near. Something was watching them, something patient, cunning, and eager. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Do not fear. Not yet. But be ready. The night has only just begun. Ender. 2. Leora nodded, gripping his hand tightly, feeling the pulse of his presence through her own. Fear and excitement swirled together inside her, and she realized that for the first time, she truly wanted to live. Not just exist, not just breathe. And in the shadows beyond the trees, unseen eyes glimmered, waiting for the moment when their new bond would be tested. The night air clung to Leora like a cloak as she followed Kael through the winding paths of the forest. The shadows seemed to bend and twist around them, alive with the whispers of creatures she could barely see. Her legs ached, but she did not complain. The determination to live, to exist for something beyond herself, burned quietly within her chest. Kael led her to the edge of a cliff, where the forest gave way to a massive castle of black stone. Towers spiraled into the sky, sharp and silent, their windows like watchful eyes. "This is my home," he said, his voice low but commanding. "Here, you will learn to survive, and perhaps, one day, to thrive." Leora's heart pounded as she looked at the citadel. Its grandeur was terrifying, yet strangely mesmerizing. She felt like a small bird, about to be swallowed by a storm. Yet a part of her also longed to step inside. "You will not be safe here from every danger," Kael continued, "but I will ensure you are never alone in your struggle." Inside, the air was cool and heavy with the scent of stone and old fires. Candles flickered along the halls, casting shadows that danced like spirits on the walls. Kael led her to a training chamber, vast and circular, with high ceilings and walls lined with strange, glowing sigils. "This is where your life begins," he said. "You will learn strength, control, and mastery over what is within you. And I will be with you, always watching." Leora swallowed, fear and curiosity twisting together. I do not know if I can do this," she whispered. "You can," Kael said firmly. "Because you have no choice. Survival is not about ease. It is about endurance, and endurance will shape you." The first days were agony. Leora's body, so frail and weak, protested against every movement. Kael's training was demanding, precise, and unforgiving. He guided her through exercises meant to awaken the magic that lay dormant within her. At first, she felt nothing but pain and frustration. Her legs trembled, her hands shook, and more than once, she wanted to collapse. Yet Kael never let her quit. His presence was a constant reminder that she could not give in. Sometimes he would correct her stance, his fingers brushing lightly against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. Other times, his sharp voice would cut through her doubt. "Focus. You are stronger than you think. Do not waste this chance." Gradually, small sparks of change began to appear. Leora could feel a faint energy stirring inside her, something warm and alive that had nothing to do with her weak body. She began to see glimpses of power. A flicker of light responding to her will. A pulse of warmth that spread through her fingers when she concentrated. Kael watched her with a mixture of pride and curiosity. "Do you see it?" he asked one night, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the forest. "You have strength, even if you cannot yet feel it. That is why you are here. That is why I chose you." Leora looked at him, the moonlight catching in her hair, making her pale skin glow. "Because those who appear weak often carry the greatest power within," Kael replied. "And they are the ones who can surprise the world." Despite his words, doubt gnawed at her. Could she truly survive in this dark world? Could she truly become someone who mattered? Yet every glance from Kael, every gesture of recognition, kept her moving forward. She realized that living for him was no longer about obedience. It was about discovering the strength to protect herself, and perhaps even to protect him. One evening, Kael called her to the training hall for a special exercise. The room was filled with mirrors, each reflecting her movements and the faint glow of her emerging power. "Tonight, you face your first test," Kael said. "You will confront the shadows of your fear. Only by embracing them can you grow stronger." Commenter, 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 commenter. Leora's heart thudded in her chest. Shadows began to gather along the walls, dark and twisting, forming shapes that seemed almost alive. Whispers filled the room, voices that echoed her own insecurities. "You are weak. You will fail. You are nothing." For a moment, Leora froze, terrified by the darkness and the voices. But then, she felt Kael's hand brush her shoulder. "Do not run," he said softly. Stand and face it. I am here with you. Summoning every ounce of courage, Leora stepped forward. She focused on the spark within her, letting it grow, letting it shine. The whispers tried to claw at her mind, but she held firm. Slowly, the shadows recoiled from the light she radiated. Her legs shook violently. Her arms ached, but she kept moving, kept fighting. Kale watched silently, his eyes glowing faintly. When Leora finally stood firm, the shadows dissipated, leaving only the pale light of the candles. She fell to her knees, exhausted, but a smile broke across her face. For the first time, she had done more than endure, she had conquered. You did well, Kale said, his voice softer now, almost approving. Do you feel it? The strength that is yours? Leora nodded, tears of relief and triumph streaming down her face. I feel it, she whispered. I am stronger. She whispered. Kyle extended his hand, and she took it without hesitation. This is only the beginning, he said. The world is full of dangers, and enemies will come. But I will teach you to face them, to fight, and to survive. Together. The days that followed were a mixture of training, learning, and quiet moments, where Leora began to understand Kael in ways beyond fear and awe. She saw glimpses of his past, the weight he carried as alpha of his clan, the loneliness beneath his strength, and slowly, a bond began to form between them, one that was delicate, complex, and filled with unspoken tension. But darkness never waits long. One night, as they returned from a training session, Kale's senses alerted him to danger. Leora had barely taken a step into the hall when a shadow moved behind the curtains. Before she could react, a figure lunged at her. Kale acted instantly, moving like a shadow himself, intercepting the attack. The intruder stumbled back, revealing another vampire, rogue, and dangerous, with eyes burning with malice. Leora froze, fear gripping her, but Kael's hand on her arm anchored her. You will not touch her, Kael said, his voice cold and final. In a blur, he struck the intruder, his movements swift, precise, and merciless. The rogue collapsed, defeated but alive, a warning left unspoken. Leora's breath came in sharp gasps. Why? Why are they attacking us? She asked, her voice trembling. Because, Kael said, his eyes darkening, power attracts enemies. You are growing stronger, and some will fear that. Some will seek to destroy you, before you can become what you are meant to be. The weight of his words sank into her chest. She realized then that survival was not only about personal strength, it was about understanding the world around her, the forces that sought to control or destroy her. And she also realized that Kael, despite his terrifying presence, would do everything to protect her, even if it meant putting himself in danger. That night, Leora lay awake in the guest chambers of the Citadel. Her body sore, but her mind alive with thoughts she had never entertained. She was no longer just a crippled girl, wishing for death. She was a warrior in the making, a student of darkness and light, and perhaps, in some way, a part of something far larger than herself. And yet, fear lingered in the corners of her mind. The rogue who had attacked them was only the beginning. Kael's world was full of danger, deceit, and power struggles that she could barely understand. Could she truly survive in this place? Could she truly become someone who mattered, not only to herself, but to the vampire who had chosen her? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft, deliberate knock on the door. Kael entered, his expression unreadable, though his eyes softened when they met hers. You have done well today, he said. But remember this: strength is not only in your power, it is in your will, your courage, and your heart. And if you falter, the world will not forgive. I understand, Leora said, meeting his gaze steadily. Kale paused, as if considering something, then stepped closer. Rest now. Tomorrow, the lessons will continue. And soon, you will face tests that will challenge everything you think you know about yourself and about me. Leora nodded, her chest tightening at his words. There was something in them that thrilled her and terrified her at the same time. She felt the stirrings of a new life, one that was uncertain, dangerous, but filled with possibility. As Kale left the room, the candlelight flickered, casting shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. Leora hugged her knees, thinking of the day ahead, of the dangers and lessons, of the strange, powerful man who had awakened something within her she never knew existed. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes watched. The forest, the castle, and the world beyond were full of threats, and Leora's journey was only beginning. But for the first time, she knew she was not alone, and for the first time, she wanted to fight for the life she had been given. The citadel lay quiet under the moon, but silence was a fragile thing. Leora stood on the balcony, the wind tugging at her hair, her eyes scanning the dark horizon. The training, the trials, and the shadows she had faced in the past weeks had strengthened her, but tonight felt different. There was a tension in the air, a promise of change that made her stomach tighten. Kale emerged from the doorway, his presence filling the balcony. He did not speak at first. He simply stood beside her, a shadow against the moonlight, his eyes watching the forest below with unblinking vigilance. Leora felt the familiar mixture of fear and fascination that always accompanied him. He was terrifying in his power. Yet there was a quiet warmth beneath the danger, an intensity that called to her own growing strength. "They are coming," Kael said finally, his voice low and deliberate. "Stronger than before. This time, they will not hesitate to strike." Leora nodded. Her hands were steady now, her mind sharp, her spirit unyielding. She no longer felt the helplessness that had marked her childhood. "Then we will face them," she said. "Together." Kael's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Together," he agreed. The enemy arrived with the first hints of dawn, creeping through the forest like shadows made flesh. A battalion of rogue vampires and cursed beasts moved silently, their intent clear, to destroy Kael and anyone allied with him. Leora's pulse quickened, but not with fear. With each step, she felt the fire of her newly awakened power, the energy that had been building inside her since the night Kael had chosen her. Kael turned to her. "Remember what you have learned. Your strength is not just in your magic or your body. It is in your heart, in your will. Trust yourself." Leora met his gaze, nodding. She could feel the bond between them, a connection forged in shadow and determination. A bond that made her feel unbreakable. The attack began with a rush of claws and teeth, shadows striking from every direction. Kael moved with terrifying grace, felling attackers with swift precision, his eyes blazing red with fury and focus. Leora stood beside him, calling forth the energy within herself. Light pulsed from her hands, a radiant shield against the darkness, repelling the cursed creatures and sending them retreating in confusion. Hours passed like moments. Leora's body screamed in protest, her arms and legs aching, but she pushed onward. Kael's voice guided her, his presence a constant reassurance. "You are more than you know. Do not doubt yourself now." Then came the moment that would test everything she had learned. A massive shadow, taller than any she had faced before, stepped forward from the trees. Its eyes glowed with cruel intelligence, its presence commanding the dark forces around it. Leora recognized it immediately. The rogue who had attacked her before, now grown stronger, infused with dark magic. "You cannot defeat me," the figure hissed, voice like a knife. "You are weak, fragile, unworthy." Leora stood her ground, remembering Kael's words, the training, the nights of pain and growth. She felt the warmth of her power, the spark of courage that had been kindled and nurtured. She did not flinch. "I am not what I was," she said, her voice steady. "I am stronger than you know, and I will not fall." The shadow lunged. Leora felt the rush of fear, but she channeled it, turning it into focus. Light burst from her hands, striking the rogue, forcing it back. Kale joined her instantly, moving as a single, unspoken unit, their bond palpable in every motion. Together, they pushed the enemy back, forcing it to retreat toward the forest. But just as the rogue began to flee, it unleashed a final surge of dark energy. Kale shielded Leora instinctively, but the blast knocked them both to the ground. Leora's vision blurred, pain radiating through her body. But she refused to give in. She felt Kale's hand on hers, steadying, guiding, urging her to rise. "Focus on me," Kale said, his voice sharp yet gentle. "You have the power. Use it now." Summoning every ounce of strength, Leora called forth the light within her, letting it flow freely, fully, without hesitation. The energy surged outward like a storm, striking the rogue with a force that threw it into the trees, silencing it. The remaining creatures scattered, unwilling to challenge the combined power of Kale and Leora. For a moment, silence fell. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint echo of the defeated shadows. Leora sank to her knees, exhausted but victorious. Kale knelt beside her, his hand brushing her hair from her face. His gaze filled with something more than relief, pride, admiration, and a quiet, unspoken emotion she could not yet name. "You did it," he said softly. "You faced what you feared most, and you triumphed." Leora looked at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. I could not have done it without you," she admitted. Kale shook his head. "No. You could. I only guided you. The strength was always inside you." The words settled in her heart like sunlight through the clouds. For the first time, she felt complete, not just alive, but truly herself. She realized that her life was no longer defined by weakness or limitation, but by choice, courage, and the bond she had forged with Kale. The first light of dawn touched the citadel, and the moon faded into pale morning. The world seemed quiet, peaceful, but both of them knew this victory was only a beginning. Danger still lurked in the shadows, waiting for a chance to strike again. Kyle helped her to her feet. "Your path is not over," he said, his tone gentle yet firm. "You will face more challenges, more tests of your power and will. But you are ready, and you are not alone." Leora nodded, feeling the weight of the words settle within her. She no longer wished to die. She no longer wished to fade away. Her life had purpose, and her heart, fragile as it had once been, was now alive with strength, loyalty, and a quiet, growing love. Kale's eyes softened as he studied her. "You have changed," he said, "more than I imagined. And yet, there is more within you still. Greater power, greater courage, and a heart that will not yield." Leora met his gaze, feeling a shiver run through her. She had once begged for death, believing life had nothing to offer her. Now, she stood on the edge of a new dawn, a life she had earned through struggle, determination, and trust. She realized then that Kale's presence in her life was no longer something to fear. It was a challenge. Yes, a test of strength and spirit, but it was also a gift. He had seen her not for her weakness, but for her potential. And in doing so, he had awakened something within her that no darkness could ever take away. I want to live," she said, her voice firm. "Not just for you, but for myself, for what I can become." Kale stepped closer, his eyes locking with hers. "Then live," he said softly, "and let nothing stop you. I will stand by you, as I always have." Together, we are unstoppable. For the first time, Leora felt the truth of those words, not as a promise, but as a certainty. The fear that had haunted her life was gone. In its place was courage, purpose, and a connection that transcended the darkness surrounding them. The wind carried the first birdsong of the morning, and for a moment, the world seemed at peace. Leora and Kale stood side by side, looking out over the forest and the horizon beyond. They had faced shadows, danger, and despair, and they had survived, together. But even in that moment of triumph, Leora knew that the world was vast, and that darkness still lingered beyond the citadel walls. Enemies, forces, and challenges would come again, seeking to test their bond, their strength, and their courage. She did not fear it. She knew now that strength was not the absence of fear, but the will to act in spite of it. And she knew that with KL at her side, she could face whatever came. KL placed his hand over hers, a quiet acknowledgement of their shared journey. "We are bound, not by fear, but by choice," he said. "And that makes us stronger than anything that could oppose us." Leora squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth and reassurance of his presence. "Then, let us face the future together," she said. The morning sun broke over the horizon, casting gold and crimson light across the citadel. Shadows retreated, but the memory of darkness remained a reminder of where they had been and what they had overcome. And as the first rays touched their faces, both Leora and KL knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would stretch far beyond the night, beyond the shadows, and into a world where their courage, love, and strength would be tested again.